Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Hogwarts, Start Fusion Phoenix Bloodline. Chapter 1, Sloane Square, York Manor, Chelsea, England, 1984. By Zahn, or Peter York, woke up to find that he had become a 5 or 6-year-old child. His parents were biologists and he had inherited the title of Earl. The couple spent most of their time studying in tropical rain forests or virgin forests, but not long ago, news of the death of Earl York and his wife came, and a golden egg the size of an ostrich egg was sent. Holding an unknown egg, Peter York is still saddened by the death of his parents. After inheriting his father's title, he was taken care of by Peter York's Aunt Christine York as a guardian because of his age. But Aunt Christine was a celibate and was away all year, so he was always looked after by the faithful housekeeper, Wales. In 1988, the 10-year-old Earl Peter York was always a child of other people in the aristocratic circle because of the name of genius. Today is a day trip to the reptile house organized by the school. Peter York accompanied his friends to visit various reptiles under the guidance of the teacher. As soon as he entered the door, he noticed a boy who was wearing fat and ill-fitting clothes and looked thin and only 7 or 8 years old. He was lying on the glass and looked at a python until he was pushed down by a fat bear child with almost no neck. Land. Peter York was surprised to see that the glass in front of the little fat man suddenly disappeared out of thin air. The python that ran out was hissing at the thin boy with its head held high, and the boy also hissing. The two seemed to be communicating. And the little fat man who fell in was trapped in the snake-climbing hall, screaming in panic. This scene is weird yet familiar. Reminds him of a movie he saw in his life. Sure enough, an equally fat middle-aged man, like a fat pig, roared, "Harry Potter, what the hell did you do?" It made him instantly understand that he had come to Harry Potter's world. Back at the manor, Peter York was thrilled. The charm of magic was something anyone could crave, and he wanted the ability to get things done with the wave of a wand. Just when the mood calmed down, I fell into loss again. Because in memory, he has never shown magical talent. And little wizards such as Harry Potter have shown special abilities since childhood. So in the end, I was just a muggle with no magical talent. Peter York was extremely unwilling to let him come to the world of magic without giving him the gift of magic. Looking irritably at the golden egg left to him by his parents, who has remained silent so far, he felt that this was a dead egg. It's just that now I think on the magical side, thinking of the dragon egg in the Harry Potter movie I've seen, and full of unrealistic hopes for the golden egg. Peter York curiously put the golden egg into the fire in the fireplace, hoping to hatch a magical beast. As soon as the golden egg was put into the fire, he kept inhaling the flame into the egg, gradually turning into a ball of red-hot iron. Peter York quickly took the tongs to clamp the golden egg and put it on the golden plate on the table. The golden egg rolled restlessly on the golden plate, and then shattered, and a golden red bird appeared, making bursts of pleasant chirping. Phoenix, this is a phoenix. Peter York remembers that Dumbledore, headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, had one, except the color was almost identical. Holding up the beautiful young phoenix excitedly, the little phoenix was also very affectionate to the first person he saw, and rubbed his head against Peter York's hand. The phoenix grows very fast. It is the size of a rooster in a few days, and it is very beautiful with golden red feathers. Picking up a glass of milk for Phoenix to drink, and touching the gorgeous feathers, Peter York sighed. After a few days, he regained his composure, only to realize sadly that even if he owned a phoenix as a pet, he was still a mortal who didn't know how to magic. In the end, Peter York took out a syringe and said to Phoenix with a pleading tone, "Field, I'm just an ordinary person. If you want to become a magician, you need to try your blood. You will definitely help me, right?" Phoenix Field hesitated for a while, saw Peter York's expectant eyes again, and nodded. "Thank you, Field. If I can become a wizard, I will definitely take you to the wizarding world." Peter York happily picked up the syringe and carefully took out a tube of phoenix blood from Field, then clenched his teeth into the vein and pushed it slowly. The place where the phoenix blood flowed was as hot as magma, which instantly caused Peter York to be in unbearable pain, and screams resounded throughout the hall. It's common sense that you can't transfuse blood with different blood types, not to mention phoenix blood. Even the craziest wizards in the wizarding world wouldn't put the blood of magical creatures into people's bodies, so Peter York's behavior is completely dead. With the blood of the phoenix flowing through the whole body, the body of ordinary people could not contain the majestic magic power contained in the blood of the phoenix. Peter York felt that he was about to explode. Ding! The super gene fusion device is starting. A fusion opportunity is given at the beginning. Phoenix gene found. Is it fusion? A mechanical voice sounded in Peter's mind. When Peter heard this, he shouted with difficulty, full of survival instinct, fusion. Fusion for me. Ding! Start fusion. The mechanical voice sounded again. Every drop of Phoenix's blood is extremely precious, let alone a whole tube. At this time, Field was standing on the table sluggishly, his golden red feathers dimmed. It looked at the dying master lying on the ground, and then spontaneously ignited, and when it was exhausted, a golden flame flew into Peter York's body. Peter York's body, like a well-oiled firewood, was on fire. With the flame instantly burned into a pile of ashes. In the living room of York Manor, the flames were still burning in the ornate fireplace, and everything was silent. From the ashes under the table, a fluffy phoenix chick suddenly appeared. With a dazed expression, he made a crisp and tender cry. The cry of the phoenix chick attracted another phoenix that was reborn in the ashes of the golden plate. The reborn Field jumped off the table and rubbed his head against another phoenix chick who was at a loss. Peter York looked at his smaller self in amazement, feeling a little overwhelmed. He regretted it when the phoenix blood tortured him to the point of death. In the last memory, he only remembered that a voice suddenly sounded in his mind, and then Field started to burn, and a flame flew out to burn him to ashes, ending his pain. System, are you there? Peter tried to ask. The super gene fusion device is at your service. What is the problem with the host? The mechanical voice sounded in his mind. When Peter heard the voice, he became excited and quickly asked, "What function do you have?" Super gene fusion device is a gene editor accidentally produced in the multiverse. It aims to fuse different biological genes for the host, so as to make the host powerful. The host randomly obtains points in daily study and life. You can exchange for a genetic fusion opportunity. The mechanical voice sounded again. Peter looked at his current appearance and hurriedly asked, "System, did you make me like this? How can I change back to a human? This system is only responsible for fusing genes, and will not change your body. The reason you are like this now is because your phoenix at the last moment divided a part of the fire of nirvana to save you. It has caused unpredictable changes. This requires a host. Explore by yourself." The mechanical voice of the system replied again. Peter was a little dumbfounded when he heard that Field was the cause. Peter York is indeed the luckiest person in thousands of years. There are not many phoenixes in the world, otherwise Dumbledore will not be the only one in the entire magical world. Peter York, who was injected with the blood of the phoenix, was originally hopeless. Only at the last minute, with the help of the gene fusion device, the phoenix gene was successfully fused. Then I got the fire of Phoenix Nirvana, and I was lucky enough to be reborn as a new phoenix. The fire of Nirvana is the source of the phoenix's immortality, the fire of the phoenix's life, and no phoenix is willing to share it. But fortunately, Field is a phoenix who was born just a few days ago, with a pure and immature mind, and has no reservations about Peter York, who is like a family member, and even willing to suffer nirvana for him. If he waits for a while and his mind matures, even if he gets close, Field will not make such a move for Peter York, so Peter York is the luckiest person. Peter. A young voice sounded in Peter York's ears, and Field made a sweet cry with his wings that were not yet fully grown. "Are you talking to me, Field?" Peter York looked at Field, who was as tall as him, in surprise, only to hear a musical chirping sound. Field nodded. Peter York has become like Field. Field is so happy. After speaking, he rubbed Peter York affectionately. Peter York finally understood that he originally wanted to borrow the blood of the phoenix to become a wizard, but he turned into a magical animal, a new phoenix. As soon as I wanted to change back to a human, a magic power poured out of my body. Wherever the magic power reached, the cytoskeleton began to reorganize and return to the appearance of a human. At this time, Peter has changed, and his hair has changed from the original pale blonde to as gorgeous as gold. Although Jungshou's face hasn't changed much, the subtle changes have caused his overall temperament to undergo earth-shaking changes, like a fallen angel. Peter York is no longer human, the phoenix is his second form, another self. This state is somewhat similar to the advanced metamorphosis of the magic world, animagus. The blood of the phoenix is flowing in the body, giving Peter York majestic magic power. He has become a wizard, and he is still a 10-year-old wizard with infinite potential. The change in appearance is destined to attract attention. The servants in the York Manor are curious about how the little Earl of the York family has grown up in just a while. Even Welsh, the housekeeper who was close to Peter York, was surprised by Peter York's change. It's just that as a housekeeper's basic qualities, he will curb his curiosity. Welsh didn't ask much, even to see the gorgeous big unknown bird, which is his pride as the best RMA graduate. At 3 or 4 months, Peter York's phoenix form is no longer a chick, and it can fly by flapping its wings, and even carry things many times heavier than him. The huge magical power also caused him to have frequent magical riots, floating things in the room, but fortunately no one saw it. In 1989, at York Manor, Peter York's 11th birthday was celebrated only by his Aunt Christine, the housekeeper Welsh and a few maids. Christine's proposal for a birthday party was rejected by Peter York. He didn't want to wear a mask to deal with other nobles on his birthday, not to mention that Hogwarts Owl would deliver a letter. Peter, you are 11 years old, are you going to go to Eton High School or hire a tutor? Christine asked with a smile, looking at his handsome nephew. She knew that although Peter was only 11 years old, his mind was comparable to that of an adult, so she respected his choice. Just as Peter York was about to speak, an owl flew in from the living room door and landed on Peter York's desk with a letter in its mouth. Taking the envelope and seeing a lion, snake, eagle and badger painted on it, Peter York's heart finally fell. He knew that he had become a wizard halfway through Phoenix Field, and he was not sure that Hogwarts would be. He will not be admitted. Peter William York in the rightmost room on the 2nd floor, York Manor, 33 Sloane Square, Chelsea, London. Christine looked curiously at the envelope in Peter York's hand and said, "Is it a prank?" So creative. Peter York excitedly opened the envelope and looked at the familiar contents inside. Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Albus Dumbledore, President of the International Federation of Magic, President of the Wizarding Association, First-Class Wizard of the Merlin Order. Dear Mr. York, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. The school is scheduled to start on September 1st, and we will be waiting for your all to bring your reply by July 31st. Yours sincerely, Deputy Principal, Female, Minerva McGonagall. Quote. Peter York immediately picked up the pen, and in Christine's puzzled eyes, handed the envelope of the reply to the owl who was still eating the cake. The owl looked very smart, nodded humanely, grabbed the envelope and rushed into the dark night. Ding, the host has successfully obtained the Hogwarts admission notice, rewarding 10 points. A mechanical voice suddenly sounded in Peter's mind. Why did you deceive the system all of a sudden? I thought you had disappeared. Peter was a little surprised that this system, which he had been immersed in for 3 years, appeared again. The system did not answer Peter's words, but just mechanically showed in his mind that he had 10 points at this time. After waiting for a long time without hearing a response from the system, Peter gave up and exited the panel. Peter, don't you believe that there will be any magic school? This is typical of a prank. Why did you reply? Kristen was surprised at his nephew's performance, because he usually looks like an adult, and it is difficult to see fit childish behavior for his age. At this point, Peter York didn't want to hide his only relative. Although Christine was very feisty, he was very kind to his nephew, and he never coveted the Duke's title and property of the York family like other aristocratic families. Auntie, do you remember my pet Field? That's a phoenix. Field, that turkey. Are you kidding me? Kristen looked like you were kidding. Peter York rolled his eyes when Kristen called Field a turkey. Every time he was said to be a turkey, Field wanted to spray this woman on fire, but fortunately, he comforted him in time. This also caused Phoenix Field and Christine not to deal with it, and even refused to let Christine touch it. Peter York didn't expect her to believe it right away. Shout out, Field. A fire burst out in the living room, and then a noble and gorgeous golden red bird appeared in the fire, dragging its long tail feathers and hovering constantly, making a pleasant sound. Field stopped on Peter York's shoulder and rubbed his head against him. Immediately, to the woman who said she was a turkey, she turned her head in disgust and looked disdainful. Peter York hilariously watched Field play petty temper, comforted the phoenix whose heart was devastated, and said to Christine, "Field is a phoenix, and I am a wizard." Christine, who suffered another wave of shocks, was shocked. The information that her nephew was a wizard was even harder for her than Field turned into a phoenix. The wizard in her impression was an evil image, and she couldn't turn her mind around for a while. Wait, let me rearrange my thoughts. My nephew has turned into a wizard, and he has a phoenix like a firebird. God, am I dreaming? Kristen grabbed himself frantically. Head, muttered to himself. On July 31st, Peter York and Christine sat early in the living room waiting for the arrival of the wizard from the magic school. Kristen didn't care about magic, except that Peter York was her dear nephew, so she wanted to make sure that Hogwarts was safe. Then the butler Welsh came in and said, "Miss, sir, there is a man who claims to be Hogwarts school outside and wants to see the Earl." Peter York got up to meet him. He didn't want to make a bad impression on the professors at Hogwarts for the first time. Walking through the garden, looking at a woman in a grey robe and a pointed hat with a serious face in front of the door, Peter guessed that she should be Professor McGonagall, the head of Gryffindor. Peter York was a little excited to see the characters in the story. "Hello, Professor, I'm Peter York. I got a letter from Hogwarts and thought it was a prank." Professor McGonagall looked at the beautiful boy in front of him and smiled a little. "I'm Minerva McGonagall, head of Gryffindor and your Professor of Transfiguration. If Mr. York is ready, we should go." "Wait, Professor, my aunt is a little worried about my safety in the wizarding world, so..." Peter York said apologetically, and introduced it into the manner. Professor McGonagall, obviously understanding, nodded, and said, "Of course. Mr. York, after all, many parents in the Muggle world don't know Hogwarts. I'll explain it to your aunt." In the course of a cup of tea, Professor McGonagall made Christine feel good about what she calls the safest school in the world. Peter on the side rolled his eyes secretly in his heart. He knew very well that in another 2 years, after the savior Harry Potter entered the school, disasters would happen every year at Hogwarts. Rejecting Professor McGonagall's request to take the bus, Peter asked Wales to take him and Professor McGonagall to the Leaky Cauldron. The Leaky Cauldron is sandwiched between a large bookstore and a record store, invisible to ordinary people, and Peter and Professor McGonagall enter. Perhaps because of the school season, the bar seemed a bit lively, and some people who took the initiative to greet Professor McGonagall were startled when they saw Peter York. "Oh, Professor McGonagall, you're picking up freshmen again." Tom the bar owner greeted with a smile and looked at Peter York again. "What a beautiful kid. I hope you go to Hufflepuff, where I graduated from the college." "Thank you, sir, and have a nice day," Peter York said sincerely and gracefully. Go through the bar and follow Professor McGonagall to the backyard, a small patio with walls on all sides, where there is nothing but a trash can and some weeds. Professor McGonagall drew his wand and tapped the wall a few times. "Remember, Mr. York, tap here with your wand, count $3 up, and $2 across. Also, welcome to Diagon Alley. Asterisk. Diagon Alley was full of people, and there was a crucible hanging outside the nearest store. The sign on the side read, "Copper tin silver crucibles, all models, automatic stirring foldable." The next store was crowded with children lying at the window, and a glass cabinet displayed the latest flying broom. Peter York entered Gringotts with Professor McGonagall. As a phoenix, he instinctively disliked these ugly goblins. But the respectful attitude of the goblins made Peter York a little embarrassed, and it also surprised Professor McGonagall. After all, the goblins couldn't hold anyone but gold coins in their eyes. Just took out £50,000 and wanted to convert it into 10,000 gold galleons and deposited it in Gringotts, but Peter York was told that there was a limit to the exchange amount, and he could only exchange a maximum of 200 gold galleons. It was extremely embarrassing in an instant. After all, he remembered that those big bosses who crossed over would always take out 100 million checks to exchange, and then receive the hot eyes and warm service of the goblins. Back to reality in an instant, Peter York knew that there were fewer than tens of thousands of wizards in the UK. If a huge amount of money really enters the wizarding world, it will definitely paralyze the financial market of wizards. So, obviously the wizards and the goblins in Gringotts are not fools. "Exchange 200 gold galleons for me," Peter said helplessly to the goblin on the counter, and then gave him more than £1,000. "Okay, Mr. York, The goblin said in a friendly manner, not as annoying as the legends say. When the goblin was slowly calculating gin galleon, Peter looked at the surrounding environment curiously. When he saw a goblin weighing rubies, he asked casually, "Mr. Goblin, do you accept gems and gold here?" Hearing what Peter meant, the goblin directly raised his head and leaned towards Peter, with a smile on his face, and said, "Of course, Mr. York. Gold and gems are always precious, and we are happy to accept them." As soon as Peter heard this, his eyes lit up. 200 gold galleons alone were not enough for him. Immediately, he took out a ruby the size of a pigeon egg from his bag, handed it to the goblin, and said, "How much is this worth? Convert it all into gold galleons." Seeing the ruby in Peter's hand, the goblin's eyes became greedy, but after seeing Peter, it became more restrained. He took out a magnifying glass from the small drawer under the table, carefully observed the ruby, and said with satisfaction, "The purity of the gem is good. Mr. York, we are willing to buy your gem for 100,000 galleons. I don't know what you think." Peter pouted and said dissatisfiedly, "My ruby is worth millions of pounds in the Muggle world." It turned out that it was only 100,000 galleons, or more than 500,000 pounds. "This is too pitiful." The goblin smiled and said, "Mr. York, this is the highest price I've specially given you. It would be nice if we could have 50,000 gold galleons for the others. If it weren't for the enforcement of secrecy laws, wizards would easily have gotten things like gold and jewelry from the Muggle world. So although these things are rare, they are still not as precious as magic materials." When Peter heard the goblin's words, he asked strangely, "Mr. Goblin, it's my first time in the wizarding world, and I'm just a Muggle-born wizard. How can you give me the highest price?" Professor McGonagall on the side also pricked up her ears. She had never seen goblins be as polite to any wizard as they were to Peter York. The goblin looked at Peter deeply and said meaningfully, "Mr. York, we fairies are born with the ability to see through the essence of things. So we are good at creating magic props. So even if we drink compound decoction and become another person, we cannot escape us eyes. But as soon as you came in, we saw that eternal flame in your body. What an enviable talent. So, Mr. York, do you need to deposit your golden galleons in our underground vault? We provide you with the bottom vault for free. There is a dragon guarding it to keep your property safe." After the goblin said a few words that confused Professor McGonagall, he directly changed the subject to sell the vault to Peter. Peter took a deep look at the goblin. He didn't expect goblins to have such abilities. He actually saw through his essence. What he said about the eternal flame was the fire of his own nirvana. But since the goblin didn't tell the truth in front of others, he smiled and said, "Then store my gold galleons in the underground vault." As for the guardian of the giant dragon that the goblin said, the safest, etc., he just listened to it. In the future, this place will be visited again and again by Voldemort and Harry Potter, and there is no safety at all. But for now, it is better to store these gold galleons in Gringotts. 100,000 gold galleons are as big as a hill, so it is inconvenient for him to carry them. When the goblin heard Peter's words, the ugly face smiled even more fiercely, and quickly took out a piece of parchment, handed it to Peter, and said, "This is a magical agreement. As long as you sign it, the underground vault 13 belongs to you. There is already the deepest position. Even many pure blood families can't get this position." Peter looked at the above content and found that there was no problem, and signed his name directly. After the goblin put away the parchment, she said with a smile, "The 13th vault now belongs to you, and your money will be stored in it. Only the goblin can open the vault with special methods, and everyone else will be tightly attached to the door and move." "No." The goblin showed a malicious look and said, "We usually check the vault once every 10 years to see if any thieves are attracted to the gate of the vault. But even if there is no need to send it to Azkaban." Peter was speechless for a moment. The goblin seemed to want someone to steal something. Then Peter followed Professor McGonagall out of Gringotts under the watchful eye of the goblin. Professor McGonagall looked at the boy in front of her. Although she didn't know what riddles the goblin and Peter were playing just now, based on her half-life experience, she knew that this very beautiful boy must be hiding some unusual secrets. She wondered if she should talk to Dumbledore when she got back to school. "Professor, what should we buy first?" Peter's words interrupted Professor McGonagall's thoughts. Professor McGonagall said, Next, we need to work separately. I will help you buy other materials. You go to Mrs. Malkin's robe shop to measure the school uniform. Then go to Ollivander to buy the wand. Stepping into Mrs. Malkin's shop, Peter York first saw a brown-haired boy whose face was flushed by the magic ruler, and his handsome and delicate face seemed simple and gentle. Hello, are you also a freshman? Peter York spoke first. I'm Peter York. Nice to meet you. The brown-haired boy stared blankly at Peter York, then came back to his senses, his face turned even redder, and hesitantly said, Hello, my name is Cedric Diggory, and I'm also a freshman, nice to meet you. Quote. Oh, Peter York remembers him, the cannon fodder in the Triwizard Tournament. There is a girlfriend that the Savior likes, and he competes with Harry Potter for Warriors, and Prince Hufflepuff, who was finally captured by Pettigrew, and Arvada, felt sympathy for him in an instant. But Peter York still has a good impression of him. Cedric Diggory is a real Hufflepuff patch, loyal and kind. And comforting Harry Potter when he was snubbed by the whole school in the Goblet of Fire. He even wanted to give up his trophy because Harry rescued him in the maze. This kind of character is rare, and Peter can't do it himself anyway. It's just hard to imagine the high-spirited Prince Hufflepuff in the future, so easily shy now. Peter York looked at him funny. Cedric, can I call you that? I think you'll be Hufflepuff's student. How do you know I'm Hufflepuff? My dad says he doesn't know, Mr. York. Cedric Diggory exclaimed with wide, lovely eyes. Call me Peter, he insisted. Okay Peter, Cedric replied with a wink. The two talked to the wizarding world from Hogwarts, and they parted reluctantly until old Diggory came to pick him up. Peter York was amazed at the simplicity of Hufflepuff, and after a while, Mr. Diggory became his friend. Leaving Mrs. Malkin's shop and coming to Ollivander's wand shop, Peter York couldn't understand that this dilapidated shop was the best wand shop in Britain, and of course the only one. Pushing the door open, Ollivander, whose beard and hair were all white, stood in front of the counter and carefully put the wands on the counter into the boxes. Apparently, a freshman had just bought the wands. Hello, I want to buy a wand. It's a freshman, do you want a wand of destiny? Yes, it's the wand that chooses the magician, even if many wizards don't think so, but if you use a wand that doesn't belong to you, it will be very bad, although incomprehensible, but it's the truth. Ollivander groaned, measuring every inch of Peter York with a tape measure, even the distance from the tip of his nose. I remember every wand I've ever sold, now let me see which wand is right for you. Ollivander shakily took one out and handed it to Peter York. No, not this one. Ollivander drew back his wand. It's okay, try this one again. For a time, a quagmire appeared in the wand shop, a clear spring appeared, and flames spewed out. The counter was full of wands, but Ollivander became more and more excited, and finally pulled out a dark purple wand. It should be almost there. By the way, I haven't asked your name yet. Hey, my memory is getting worse and worse. Ollivander looked up and asked. My name is Peter York, sir. Peter York rolled his eyes secretly, just said that he remembered every wand, but now he forgets. After all, he is not a savior. Ollivander handed him the wand, 13¼ inches, yew-wood body, symbol of immortality and immortality. Phoenix feather, symbol of mighty power. Taking the yew wand, Peter York clearly felt the magic within his body shoot out along the wand, forming a vague phoenix shadow in midair. Aha, I just said there's always one wand Ollivander makes that suits you. Ollivander was very excited, took a deep look at Peter York, pointed to the wand in his hand and said, Mr. York, there are very few wand combinations like this. So far I have only sold 2 of the same wand, one of which is in your hand, and the other is owned by the unspeakable person. I think you will definitely do something. After all, that person has also done something big. Although it's terrible, it's a big thing. Hearing Ollivander apply what he said to Harry Potter to himself, Peter York pouted indifferently. Then he raised his hand to interrupt Ollivander, who wanted to talk at length, and said weakly, Mr. Ollivander, I feel that this wand is not suitable for me, can you change it? Ollivander shook his head in disbelief. Impossible, Mr. York, the wand clearly chose you just now. But the phoenix feather in the wand won't listen to me. Peter York could clearly feel the wand's resistance to him. It was the heart of the phoenix tail feather in the wand. He sensed the phoenix bloodline in his body, and he was unwilling to surrender and even confronted it. Ollivander took the wand and observed it carefully, put it in his ear again, and looked at Peter York with a look of bewilderment and confusion. It doesn't resist your magic, but it resists you. This is what happened. Peter York is helpless, and if he doesn't make it clear, he won't even think about having his own wand. In an instant, it turned into a golden-red phoenix in front of Ollivander. After flying around, it turned back into a human body, and looked at the stunned Ollivander with interest. Ollivander felt that his heart was about to stop, and he pointed at Peter York with a trembling body, and finally grabbed his hand like a madman. Blood atavism, complete atavism. Merlin, this legendary miracle can met by me. The source of the first generation of wizards is actually that human beings transplanted the blood of magical creatures into people in a unique way. There are so many incredible abilities. Later, the wizards discovered that the offspring born by combining with each other also possessed magic power at birth, and then gradually formed the current wizard. And the bloodline regression is the body of the wizard. The inherited magical creature's bloodline becomes rich, making its magic power stronger. But this phenomenon has only appeared in legends, and that is Merlin. It is said that he can turn into a nightmare. The reason is that Merlin is said to be born from the combination of a nightmare and a human woman. And Peter York's ability to transform into a phoenix is completely atavistic in Ollivander's view, which is something he has never seen before. Since it was regarded as a bloodline atavism, Peter York did not deny it. After being reborn through nirvana, in addition to being able to transform into a human form, he is completely a phoenix. But this way is not suitable for telling other people. Bloodline atavism is the only reason for his existence. Mr. Ollivander, you're not going to tell anyone else, are you? Peter York looked at Ollivander with clear eyes and a pleading attitude. Ollivander looked seriously for the first time, this little wizard who was obviously from the Muggle world. Then he nodded with a smile like an old fox. Of course, son of the Phoenix, you don't have to worry that I will say it. The wizards spare no effort to protect the little wizard, and I also really want to know how your little phoenix will grow up. How has it become? Well, Peter York was given the title for now, but, son of the Phoenix, sounds good, at least he thinks it sounds better than the golden boy of the savior. Mr. York, I think I know how to make the best wand for you. Ollivander's remark made Peter York happy. But I need the phoenix feather on your body to make the wand hard, and I don't think it's better for you. Peter York knew it was going to be bad, so he turned into a phoenix, and endured the pain to let Ollivander, a sly old man, snatch a few tail feathers from him. Peter York looked at his beautiful tail feathers being plucked with regret, and wanted to cry without tears. Phoenix's beauty-loving nature made him feel boundless resentment towards Ollivander, the culprit, and wished he could also pluck out the few silver hairs on the old fox's head. Ollivander looked at it with a smile, and Peter York, who was about to cry in pain, said, "Come and get your wand in 3 days, and you won't have to pay for the production this time." Peter York had a smile on his face, but he cursed the shrewd old man to death. Obviously a phoenix feather can be made into a magic wand, but he chose the most painful tail feather, and plucked out a few at a time. Was he bullying him for not knowing how to make a magic wand? Also, don't think that he didn't see the old man looking forward to his tears. Phoenix's tears can cure all poisons, and he couldn't bear to shed it himself. Without a suitable wand, Peter York had to come to the Lycan bookstore to meet with Professor McGonagall, but he came early and did not wait for the professor. Looking at the room full of books, Peter York's bookworm property broke out completely. After finding a few books designated by the teaching, he began to immerse himself in the world of the book, until he was woken up by Professor McGonagall, who did not know when he arrived. Professor McGonagall. Peter York stood up embarrassedly. Minerva McGonagall looked at the thick book in Peter York's arms, nodded with a smile. Looks like Ravenclaw is about to welcome a studious little eagle. Have you got everything? All but the wand, and Ollivander said he'd come back for the wand in 3 days. Peter York answered truthfully. Minerva McGonagall, though curious, didn't ask much, gave him a ticket for platform 9 3/4, and left after telling him not to lose it. Ding, initially complete the exploration of Diagon Alley, reward 1 point. The system suddenly prompted. It's only 1 point. It's too little, Peter complained. So far he has tried many ways, but no points have been awarded. There are only 11 points on the system. He felt that he still had a long way to go before he could collect 100 points. 3 days later, Peter got his U wand with a phoenix tail feather at the heart. The Phoenix bloodline gave him the ability to cast spells without a wand, but after all, it couldn't compare to the effect of casting spells with a wand. Otherwise Voldemort wouldn't have tried everything to find the Elder Wand. In the past, it was easy to try a few stickless magic at home, but for the black magic that directly hits the soul, it is impossible to use it directly with your hands, otherwise you will die without killing others. The wand is easy to use, and casting magic is easier and easier. Phoenix's sensitive attributes make it easy for him to detect traces of traces. Trace silk usually accompanies young wizards, and does not disappear until the age of 17. The Ministry of Magic relies on traces to track underage wizards. Is there any misuse of magic? However, the tracking effect of this kind of trace is relatively vague. For example, if an adult wizard casts magic in front of a minor wizard, the Ministry of Magic cannot tell who is casting this magic. Therefore, ordinary wizard families rely on adult wizards to consciously supervise underage wizards. And the little wizards born in Muggle families are even worse. They can't use any magic when they return home during the holiday. Once used, the Ministry of Magic will warn you the first time. But the second time, the student will be expelled and the wand will be broken. Just as Harry Potter used a spell in front of Harry Potter in order to prevent him from entering the school before the start of the second year, and the Ministry of Magic judged that it was the spell he cast and sent a warning letter. And then during the holiday after the Goblet of Fire, the Patronus charm used to expel the Dementors, received a letter of dismissal from the Ministry of Magic, and had to break his wand. And he is also the savior of the magic world, and he has been defended by many parties before he has a trial. But other ordinary Muggle students did not have such good luck. There was no appeal process, and they directly broke off their wands and drove them out of the magic world. The appearance of this trace is nakedly targeting Muggle-born students. So Peter hates this, traces of obvious discrimination. At this time, the effect of the Phoenix Flame was manifested, and the trace was burned out in a single fire, while the wand was still intact. There is an obvious loophole in the Ministry of Magic. That is, freshmen before school can experiment with spells without warning for more than a month after they get their wands. So Peter experimented with various magics recklessly 1 month before school started. Basic magics such as clear springs like water and floating spells are successfully performed a few times. There is also armor and body protection. It was successful after trying for a long time. This kind of talent is astounding. At the same time, his system points have also risen considerably to 25 points. These are the points awarded by the system after he successfully cast the spell in the textbook. It's just that there aren't many spells in the first-year textbook. Even the spell of Armor and Bodyguard is a spell that Peter saw in a senior student's notebook when he was rummaging through old books in the second-hand bookstore in Diagon Alley. This is also due to the fact that when Peter was reading fan novels in his previous life, he often saw the protagonist find good things in second-hand bookstores, so he took the opportunity to go to Ollivander to get his wand and went to the second-hand bookstore to rummage for a while. It's just that Peter was thinking too much. Although there are good things in the second-hand bookstore, they will be taken away by the shopkeeper immediately, so the old books left on the bookshelf are all used textbooks by some students. The textbook was either missing a few pages, or was covered in large swaths of text by ink stains, and he even turned to an old textbook stuck in chewing gum. This made Peter give up completely. Even the note that recorded the Armor and Bodyguard was a diary, and it recorded some trivial things, and the only useful thing was this spell. If Peter York hadn't stumbled upon the one with the spell, he would have thrown it away like the shopkeeper. The spell of Armor and Protection sounds simple, but many employees of the Ministry of Magic can't even use a decent armor and protection, so they know that this spell is likely not to appear in student textbooks. Peter York bought this notebook for only 2 copper nut, and with the armor protection spell, this notebook is a great value for Peter. Peter York stands between platforms 9 and 10 at London Railway Station on September 1st. He looked at a wall in front of him. His face was a little foggy, and he always felt that it would be a real wall if he hit it. He really didn't understand the evil taste of wizards. Bravely rushed to the wall, passed through a dark tunnel without hindrance, and came to a brand new iron steam train with the words, Hogwarts Express. Ding, sign into platform 9 3/4, reward 1 point. The system prompted. Peter York was stunned for a moment when he heard the sound of the system, Then he was a little happy, and took a small step closer to reaching 100 points. He successfully cast a spell, and only 1 point. There were a lot of people on the 9 3/4 platform, and Peter York was only carrying a school bag with an extension spell on it, which he bought in Diagon Alley for 10 galleons. The owl that delivered the letter didn't buy it. It would be nice if he had Field, the teleporting phoenix, but Field didn't like to stay in the cage, so he had to wait until Hogwarts to summon it. On the train, the first few carriages are full. Peter York walked down the aisle to the last car, opened the car door, and found that there was already someone inside, thinking that he had the same thoughts as him. "Excuse me, may I sit here?" Turning his head to the brown-haired boy outside the window, he looked at Peter York in surprise. "Peter, it's nice to meet you." "Cedric, we meet again." Peter York was also surprised. The two chatted very happily. Peter also took out Muggle snacks from his backpack and distributed them to Cedric. Simple Hufflepuff looked at these Muggle food with pure eyes and curiosity. The more they talked, the happier they became, and slowly they talked about magic. And then Peter's few simple magics gained Hufflepuff's adoring little eyes. "Hey, Seed, why did you sit in the back?" Meet new friends. Entered a pair of red-haired twins, their restless personalities with rolling eyes, clearly familiar with Cedric. "Hi, George, Fred," Cedric greeted, turning to introduce Peter York. "These are the Weasley twins, freshmen like us, and they're lively. George, Fred, this is Peter York from the Muggle world. He's amazing, he's read all the first-year books, and can do a lot of magic." "Oh, George, oh Fred." The twins' funny attributes were exposed in an instant. "This is the legendary Peter York. It's an honor to meet you." The twins gave an aristocratic salute, then sat across from Peter York and Cedric. "Our lovely Ced has been talking about you all holiday. Say you are handsome and elegant. Say you are gentle and kind. Oh, what if our lovely Cedric fell in love with Peter York?" The two sang in unison. "George, Fred." Cedric was furious. Peter York hilariously looked at the twins, two of his favorites in Harry Potter, always bringing joy to others, getting good grades, and peddling the joke props they made. The four of them laughed and laughed all the way. As night fell, the train stopped on the humble platform of Hogsmeade. Peter separated from Cedric without noticing, and the group stumbled down the path following the giant Hagrid. Climbing over the hill and seeing the huge castle on the lake shore in the distance, all the new students couldn't help but feel a sense of adoration. Peter York swore it was the biggest castle he had ever seen, standing like a hill by the Black Lake. Peter York was in one boat with the twins and a pretty girl who was definitely Gryffindor, and Cedric was in another. The boat advanced on its own in the eyes of all the surprised eyes, passed through the bottom of the cliff covered with green, came to the base of the castle, and went up the stone steps. Cedric chased between Peter and the twins, took a breath and said, "Finally found you. Just now in a daze, I separated from you." The twins grinned and pulled him up, and the four of them followed behind Hagrid. Hagrid led a group of young wizards to a huge oak door and knocked on the wooden door with a big hand. "Professor McGonagall, the freshmen are here," Hagrid said respectfully, seeing McGonagall in a pointed hat and square glasses appear behind the door. "Thank you, Hagrid. Now the freshmen come with me." Professor McGonagall looked serious. Peter York and other new students followed her to the other end of the inner hall, in a small empty room. "The opening banquet is about to begin, but before you sit, you must first determine which college you will enter. There are Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. You will study and live together for the next 7 years. Students who perform well can give points to the college." After explaining the situation of the college, some requirements of the new semester, and the matter of the college cup, Professor McGonagall led the freshmen in a row into the hall. Peter was dragged to the front by the naughty twins. His outstanding appearance attracted the attention of a large number of people, especially his aristocratic temperament involuntarily leaked, which attracted the attention of Slytherin's table. Peter York looked curiously at the candles floating in the sky and the ceiling that was enchanted into the night sky, and repeatedly sighed at the wonder of magic. The freshmen stood uneasily together, Professor McGonagall conjuring a four-legged bench with a wand in one hand and a tattered hat in one hand, and pulled out a roll of parchment. "Now the classmates who call your name come forward, put on the sorting hat, and he will assign you to the corresponding college." The first one, Alice Wick. A somewhat excited brunette girl walked out of the freshman group and sat on a stool. Ravenclaw, the Sorting Hat screamed. In an instant, the girl took off her hat amid the cheers of Ravenclaw and ran to her own academy. The twins watched the freshmen being assigned to different colleges, and although they were nervous, they still remembered their funny attributes. "Ah, George, if we were assigned to different colleges, you would still be my favorite person. Oh, dear Fred, if you're sorted into Slytherin, I'll have Merlin bless you, because Mommy will send you a shout-out letter. May Merlin bless you." The two of them hilariously crossed the Christian cross on their chests, and then made an appearance of being generous to death. These two treasures kept Peter in a happy mood. He patted the two of them on the shoulders and comforted them. "You look like you are definitely Gryffindor students, there is no doubt about that. And your family has been Gryffindor for generations, so don't worry about being caught by Gryffindor, to another college." The twins relaxed a little, then asked, "Peter, which house are you going to? Or come to Gryffindor so we can live together?" Peter York shook his head. "My personality doesn't suit Gryffindor, and I might be sorted into Ravenclaw or Slytherin. Of course we're still friends, right?" The twins nodded. They never liked to abide by the rules. Even if Peter York was assigned to Slytherin, he was still their friend. Thinking about having a Slytherin friend, it instantly felt cool. Cedric was also nervous and said, "Peter said I would enter Hufflepuff. If only I could be in the same academy as you guys." Peter patted him on the shoulder and said, "Everyone is still good friends in different colleges. We can even invite each other to visit our own college later." Cedric was slightly relieved when he heard the words. When he heard Professor McGonagall shout, "Cedric Diggory, please come forward," and was instantly speechless. Peter pushed Cedric, who was stunned, to put on the Sorting Hat. Cedric Diggory walked forward, hand and foot, and sat down on a stool, draped in a tattered sorting hat. "Hufflepuff," the Sorting Hat announced directly after thinking for a while. The academy at the far right table applauded enthusiastically and welcomed this handsome young man. Cedric glanced at Peter and the twins, then ran to the Hufflepuff long table. When it was George and Fred's turn, they both entered Gryffindor, and the twins hugged excitedly. Charlie Weasley, also in Year 6, with red hair, and Percy Weasley, Year 3, both cheered for their brother's entry into Gryffindor. Peter York, **. When his name was called, Peter York stepped forward unhurriedly and sat on the stool gracefully. "Hello, Mr. Sorting Hat. Oh, very polite freshman, not bad at heart, hungry for knowledge, suitable for Ravenclaw, and pure magical creature blood, very ambitious. I know where to put you." "Ah, that's it," the Sorting Hat shook his head. Curious and wary, Peter asked the Sorting Hat, "Are you using dementia? You've seen all my memories." "Ha, vigilant little guy. Don't worry, I'm Gryffindor's hat, and I was injected with my own thoughts by the four giants, so I can only feel your thoughts at the moment, and I won't know the secrets in your little brains." "Interested. I won't tell anyone," the Sorting Hat said a little unhappily at Peter's distrust. Peter apologized. "Sorry, Mr. Sorting Hat, I just don't like my memory being probed." "I forgive you, little guy," said the Sorting Hat, "but looking at you like this, I feel that my judgment is correct. I know where to put you, and when you get there, you will definitely have a great as Slytherin," the Sorting Hat announced loudly. Before taking off his hat, Peter whispered, "Mr. Sorting Hat, can you help me keep a secret? Don't tell anyone." "Don't worry, little guy, I am a collection of the thoughts of the four giants. No one can let me speak, not even the principal," the Sorting Hat said proudly. Peter breathed a sigh of relief, then smiled and took off the Sorting Hat, bowed to it, and walked to Slytherin's long table. The students of Slytherin House gave a few symbolic applause, showing little affection for the new student who was suspected of being a Muggle wizard. The other houses had only Cedric Diggory of Hufflepuff, and the twins of Gryffindor, applauding him enthusiastically. Peter York showed an aristocratic side, walked gracefully and calmly to the front of the first grade, regardless of other people's exploration, smiled and nodded to Cedric and his twin brother, and then sat down. The Sorting Hat said that he had ambitions. In order to become a wizard, he could risk his life to transplant the Phoenix bloodline, but it did not mean that he wanted to participate in the struggle between Dumbledore and Voldemort, and he did not want to become a savior. As long as he doesn't provoke him, he will stay quietly in the Slytherin Academy to improve his strength until he is not afraid of anyone's threat. Ding! The host joins the Slytherin Academy and rewards 1 point. The current points are 27 points. The system reminded in his mind. Chin-Yu smiled, and he was very happy to be able to increase his points. It's only now that I get to school, and I have already accumulated a quarter of the points. In this semester, there is a good chance that you will be able to reach 100 points. At that time, you can fuse the blood of another magical animal to enhance your strength. Among the magical animals in the magical world, thunderbirds can control the weather and lightning, invisible beasts can hide and predict the short-term future, birds and snakes are as big as they want, etc. These are all abilities that Peter is very envious of. When the sorting was over, Dumbledore stood up, and the students fell silent. The banquet begins. A sumptuous amount of food suddenly appeared on the shiny gold utensils, and everyone happily began to enjoy dinner. Under the eyes of Slytherin, Peter York ate the food bit by bit, and the etiquette engraved in his bones made his meals extremely elegant. After dinner was over, the plate was shiny again. After the principal ordered a few bands and sang the demonic school song, the freshmen of each college returned to their dormitories under the leadership of the prefects. Slytherin's prefect was fifth-year Chris Jones, who brought the first-year students to the door of the cellar and said, "Glory," to the snake statue coiled on the door. Immediately looking at the new student, he said, "If you don't want to be locked out, remember the password." The Slytherin common room is regal, with silver and green matching nicely, and snake markings all over the place. All gathered together, waiting for the instruction of the dean. The door opened, and Snape in a black robe with a gloomy face looked like a vampire. His empty eyes glanced coldly at everyone, and he slowly made a magnetic voice. "Since you have entered Slytherin, it means that you have a certain essence of Slytherin in you. I don't want you to be like brainless Gryffindors. Slytherin values honor and worships the strong. As long as you are not trolls, you can get what you want. Now, it's the chief competition within the academy. The first place in each grade is the grade chief, and everyone has to obey the chief's orders." As soon as the words fell, Dean Snape's wand emitted a white light, turning the center of the lounge into a platform. First-year freshmen start first. There were only 12 Slytherin freshmen at this level, including Peter York, and they all took the stage, and no one wanted to abstain. There were no pure-blooded aristocratic students like Malfoy in this class, but only Peter York was a suspected Muggle-born, so everyone pointed their wands at him, and the senior students also looked on. Peter York pulled out his U-wand and looked at everyone sullenly, thinking he was being bullied. A freshman couldn't help it at first, and a leg-locking spell, "Stand stiff and dead," was thrown at Peter York, which immediately caused a chain effect. Tarantara dance. Hot and hot. The front teeth contest is great. There are also more complex incantations. Obviously preschool magic education is good. Passed out. Countless spells were facing Peter York, and he calmly gave himself an armor to protect himself, and threw a few consecutive spells against the spell. There are many obstacles. There are many obstacles. Accept your weapons. After all, Peter York is a man with the magic power of an adult wizard. He knocked this group of freshmen down in a few seconds, and some of them were also hit by his own magic spell. Only Peter York and a stronger Alan White were left on the stage. Just as White was in a tense confrontation, Peter York stepped off the stage, and sat leisurely on the sofa under the many surprised eyes and White's shameful stares. Snape, who had been silent for a while, raised his eyebrows, and a spell calmed the chaotic scene. First-year chief, Alan White. With the confrontation between the senior students, the scene became more and more exciting. Various advanced spells flew around. Peter York also watched with great interest. He had too few spells and no actual combat experience. He desperately needs it. The talent and ability he showed in this battle caught the attention of Slytherin students, and he was respected accordingly. Some freshmen in the same grade also took the initiative to greet him. After the chief competition was over, he returned to his dormitory and saw the names of Peter York and Alan White on the door plate. Peter York sighed that it was fate. Entering the house, looking at White who was sorting clothes on the other bed, he took the initiative to say hello, I'm Peter York, I'll be my roommate in the future, I hope to get along well. HMPH. White turned his head and ignored him, then said faintly, I don't dare to be friends with the powerful Mr. York. You obviously can beat me, but you give up the game. Are you looking down on me or humiliating me? Peter York looked at the arrogant White in front of him with amusement, Gryffindor people always called Slytherin students evil dark wizards, but now they are only 11-year-old children. Where is the distinction between good and evil? Peter walked up to him and said, "Sorry, I just don't want to be the chief. It's tiring, you'll understand me, right?" White blushed a little at the stare, and said awkwardly, "You can call me Alan, but don't expect me to forgive you for what you did in the chief match. I will beat you next year." As an adult of psychological age, Peter York certainly doesn't care about children, nodding encouragingly. There was a melodious screeching sound, and Field suddenly appeared in the bedroom, sitting on Peter York's shoulder. "Phoenix, you actually have a phoenix," White exclaimed incoherently, looking at the intimacy of one person and one phoenix. Peter York raised his eyebrows. "This is my phoenix, his name is Field." "Peter York, are you sure you are a Muggle wizard? Phoenix is very rare, less than unicorns, and it is very arrogant. Only Dumbledore has one in the wizarding world. It is a fascinating magical creature." White stared at Field curiously, sighed again and again in his mouth. White spent the whole night studying Phoenix, and the hot eyes made Peter York and Field feel cold on their backs, and Field even wanted to disappear immediately and hide away. After a tiring day, Peter York went to bed after cleaning up, and he could hear White's murmuring in a daze. In the morning, Peter York woke up as soon as his biological clock arrived. He left the dormitory and went to the common room. Only a few senior students sat quietly with books. It was still early. Peter York walked out of the cellar to the shore of the Black Lake. The forbidden forest in the distance was mysterious and deep. The humidity in Hogwarts was very high in the early morning. He walked a few times around the lakeshore wearing a cloak, and he could still see an ugly mermaid out of the water. Back in the cellar, the common room was full of first-year students. "Peter York, you got up so early, I didn't see you when I woke up." White came over to say hello. He was the first-year headmaster, busy giving new students the route map for the class. The path to Hogwarts was twisty and the stairs it kept changing, and without a roadmap, it was impossible to find a classroom. Fortunately, there was a senior leading the school a month ago. The first class was Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration class. Slytherin's students arrived in the classroom after breakfast. The classroom was empty except for a cat sitting on the desk. Peter York nodded to him and sat down. When the class was about to begin, Gryffindor's talents arrived slowly, and the whole room was instantly noisy. "Hi, Peter York." The twins sat on Peter York's side, ignoring the weird looks from Slytherin and Gryffindor. "Are you okay? Did those Slytherins bully you?" Peter York looked at the two brothers with a smile. "George Fred, no one can bully me. You forget that I am also a Slytherin, and I will never let myself suffer." "Oh, the sinister Slytherin." The twins joked hilariously. Looking at the active twins, and then at the cat on the podium, Peter York deliberately did not remind the two until the cat on the table jumped down and became Professor McGonagall. All the freshmen were shocked. Professor McGonagall stared at the twins who had been most active just now, tapped his wand on the desk, and the desk instantly turned into a living lion, roaring deafeningly at the twins. "Transfiguration is a rigorous and dangerous class. Anyone who doesn't listen to tricks in class will go out to me. The class is officially starting now." After teaching the theoretical knowledge, Professor McGonagall gave each freshman a match and asked the freshmen to try to turn it into a needle. Everyone worked hard, but there was no sign. Peter York took out his wand and tried to transform the match. With the magic of an adult, he easily transformed it successfully. The first time it turned into a silver needle, and when he tried again, a lifelike phoenix pattern appeared on the needle. He didn't want to be a standout. He was just about to hide the silver needle when he was spotted by the sharp-eyed Professor McGonagall, who took it and observed it carefully. "Very nice. This is the most perfect transfiguration needle I've ever seen in a freshman, +10 for Slytherin. Come see Mr. York's transfiguration needle." Professor McGonagall is delighted for a student with an outstanding transfiguration talent. "Can Mr. York give it to me? I'm going to keep it in my collection." Peter York respected this impartial and rigorous Professor Gryffindor, stood up and nodded slightly. "My pleasure, Professor McGonagall." Ding! Get the professor's praise, reward 1 point. The current point is 28 points. The system prompt sounded again. Stimulated by Peter York, everyone practiced more seriously. After all, transfiguration is not a magic spell. If you recite it correctly, you can succeed. The rest of the class after a class failed to turn matches into needles, and the Gryffindor twins only turned matches into half-finished needles, but it was already showing a good talent. After class, Slytherin's students became closer to Peter York. Slytherin admired the strong. Peter York's super talent in spells and transfiguration was enough to draw them in. The Weasley twins even pulled him to figure out how to transform. Success. Chapter 11. The second session is Defense Against the Dark Arts. The professor is a retired Auro, named Salo Green. He will only teach according to the script, but compared to the future, Quirrell and Lockhart, who are possessed by Voldemort, will at least teach some tips. Classmates, put away your textbooks, we don't need it. Today I'm going to teach you how to recognize and understand how to resist oak spirits. Professor Green held a potted plant covered with dozens of humanoid creatures that looked like green dragonflies. He grinned and squeaked, "Now who told me what an oak elf is?" Alan White raised his hand first, glanced at Peter York proudly, and said slowly, "The oak spirit is a magical creature that lives on the oak tree. They are the guardian of the oak tree. Anyone who tries to destroy a tree, especially one who wants to gather oak branches to make a wand, is often attacked. Their sharp and venomous teeth, while not lethal, can cause pain for days in the bite. There are often cases where someone mixes the oak elf and the tree protector, and feeds it with earthworms and is attacked. The only weakness of tree elves is their fear of smoke, especially smoke from burning oak trees." Quote. Very good. What Mr. White said is very correct. Slytherin will add 5 points. Professor Green was very happy about this, disregarding the tree elf standing on the branch angrily at him, and said loudly, "The oak tree elf is most afraid of smoke, because smoke makes them sleepy, so today we learn our first spell against the oak spirits, smoke. Tell me, smoke." Smoke is heavy. Everyone kept practicing with their wands. The spell was so easy that most people had a small cloud of smoke from the tip of their wand, and Peter York turned the smoke into various shapes, from a unicorn to a phoenix. The twins of Gryffindor are obviously not peaceful masters. The superposition effect of the two wands from the same willow tree and the same unicorn casting spells at the same time is extraordinary, pervaded the entire classroom. Cough cough. The smoky objects were not only the tree elves. The thick smoke choked everyone out of the classroom, causing them to burst into tears. Peter York hilariously watched the twins secretly high-five. Apparently their prank had succeeded. In the following time, Professor Green was fighting the choking smoke and the dazed tree elves, and the Defense Against the Dark Arts class ended early. But what made the twins happy and sad was that they were punished by Professor McGonagall to do labor sports on the first day of school. There was no class in the afternoon. As soon as Peter York returned to the dormitory, White was pestering him to continue to observe field. Obviously, he liked magical creatures like phoenixes. Slytherin's habit of respecting privacy makes Peter York very satisfied, and so far Alan White has not disclosed to others that he has Phoenix. Unable to use adult magic, Peter York decided to go to the library to read more books. Although he can't enter the restricted area, the knowledge outside is enough for him to learn for a long time. Voldemort, who had no background at the time, relied on the knowledge of Hogwarts to become a great wizard comparable to Dumbledore step by step. No one dares to mention his name. Suffice to say that Hogwarts is rich in knowledge. Most of the people in the library were Ravenclaw students, the rest were Slytherins and Hufflepuffs, and Gryffindor only had a few seniors. Peter York walked to the rows of books, carefully looked at the books on the shelf, and pulled out several spell books to borrow. "Peter, you're here too." A familiar voice called from behind Peter York, who turned to see Cedric Diggory of Hufflepuff. He looked very happy to see Peter York, and then read the thick book of spells in his hand, and said in amazement, "Peter, you should go to Ravenclaw, it's really stressful to read such a thick book." Peter York was also very happy to see the shy Prince Hufflepuff again. After registering the books he borrowed, he and Cedric went for a walk by the Black Lake. At this time, Cedric didn't have the confidence he had in the Triwizard Tournament, always showing a shy smile, a simple little badger. "Peter, didn't Slytherin bully you? I heard that they don't like hemp wizards." Cedric asked worriedly, looking around Peter, as if to see signs of injury from him. Obviously Slytherin's bad reputation is not only just in Gryffindor. "Don't worry, the people of Slytherin respect the strong, so as long as I win they won't bother me." Peter York felt warm about Little Badger's concern, and told him about the chief battle last night. "Reassure him. I didn't expect you to be so good, Peter. Cedric Diggory looked at him admiringly, making Peter York very useful. After a pleasant chirping, the big golden red bird suddenly appeared on the lake and flew to Peter's shoulder. His pet phoenix will appear in front of everyone sooner or later, and has been seen by his roommate Alan White, so Peter York didn't mind letting Cedric see him, and called Field directly. Listening to Field complaining about his roommate White, staring at him like a hungry wolf, wanting to get something off of him at any time, made him shudder. Peter wanted to laugh. This proud phoenix was actually afraid people. It is said that Alan White's fascination with phoenixes is even more fascinated by Malfoy's Decora's fascination with dragons, and Field's life will not be peaceful in the future. Wow, Peter, you actually have a phoenix! Cedric Diggory exclaimed, his face full of disbelief. I think you are the only person in the wizarding world who has a phoenix besides Professor Dumbledore. How did you get him? My parents were Muggle biologists, and I hatched phoenix eggs when they were on an expedition to South America, Peter York replied with a shrug. My God, George, did I read it wrong? Yes, Fred, I'm hallucinating too. The twins of the Weasley family emerged out of nowhere, with identical faces, with the same exaggerated expressions. Peter actually has a phoenix. The two brothers exclaimed like a duo, staring straight at Phoenix Field. Field was frightened by the Weasley twins, who wanted to pluck feathers from it at any time, and shivered with fright. He rubbed Peter, and couldn't wait to disappear into everyone's eyes as a flame. Peter York felt helpless. Phoenix is too rare, from Ollivander in Diagon Alley, to his roommate Alan White, and then to the twins in front of him. All the blatant eyes made him want to hide Field. Seeing the phoenix disappear in front of them, Cedric and the twins sighed in unison, showing a reluctant expression. The four of them walked slowly by the Black Lake. Occasionally, one or two mermaids appeared on the lake. A huge octopus was lying on the shallow water, fortunately stopped by Peter and Cedric. The twins are very adventurous, dragging Peter and Cedric to explore Hogwarts, climbing from the moving stairs to the 8th floor, and then finding some abandoned classrooms. The twins have always been interested. At the same time, Peter also received a reward of 3 points. The system reminds him that he has accumulated 31 points. This makes Peter very happy. The shy Hufflepuff obviously didn't know how to reject others, and even contributed to the position of the Hogwarts kitchen. It was not until his feet were trembling that he couldn't walk, and Peter found out that he ended the expedition forcefully. Peter York took Cedric to Hufflepuff's door, watched him enter the common room, then turned and left, walking down the corridor leading to the cellar, the moving portraits and the moving staircase. It made him feel amazing. But as he walked, Peter York found himself lost and wanted to go back along the same path, but the result was that he went farther and farther, scurrying around like a headless fly, and finally had to stop and sigh in frustration. Peter, who had a poor sense of direction, completely exploded with the Luigi attribute in the labyrinth-like castle. Obviously there are some students in Slytherin who found out that they have the blood of a stupid lion, but they didn't go back to the dormitory to sleep during the curfew time. Am I right? The curious Mr. York. A cold voice sounded from behind. Peter York turned his head stiffly, and looked at the head of Slytherin, who appeared like a ghost. His black robe, his long black and greasy hair, and his displeased face made him look like somewhat spooky. Professor Snape, I'm lost, Peter York replied weakly. Hey, then you're even more stupid than a stupid lion. Snape's expression grew gloomier. You can go now, Mr. York, with a head full of splendens, if you don't want Slytherin Academy to be deducted points because of you. Snape turned and walked away, causing his black robe to roll up and down, looking like a man in the dark night. Only vampire bats. Glory. Arriving at the door of Slytherin's dormitory, Peter said the command and bowed to Snape, who was clearly in a less bright mood. Thank you for bringing me back, Professor Snape. But when Peter was immersed in the emotion that Snape didn't deduct his points, and that Snape was a good guy, Snape said, go to my office tomorrow night for confinement, and tomorrow morning's potions class. Hope you don't disgrace Slytherin. Back to reality. Opening the door, Peter walked into the common room, where there were still many people. Hearing the movement, he looked up at Peter, then lowered his head and went about his own business. The people of Slytherin are very complicated about this student of Muggle blood. On the one hand, they think that he is extremely talented, and he can even perform magic spells that the seniors may not know, but on the other hand, they care about his blood. Therefore, the senior students basically ignored him, and the lower grades admired his strength. Peter, where have you been so late? I'm worried that you will be taken away by Filch. Alan White ran over excitedly, dragged him into the bedroom, and wanted him to summon the phoenix who had disappeared all afternoon. Peter said sullenly, I'm lost. I didn't meet Filch and his cat. Before Alan could breathe a sigh of relief, Peter York covered his face with a moan, but unfortunately, we were caught by our dean, Professor Snape. Hi. Alan White looked at him sympathetically. The horror of Professor Snape was known to the whole school. Professor Snape asked me to go to his office for confinement tomorrow, and said he was looking forward to my potions class tomorrow morning. Peter York slumped on the bed helplessly. Bang! A flame appeared in the air, a phoenix appeared, ignoring White's longing eyes, flying straight to stop on Peter's chest, looking curiously at his half-dead appearance, and then issued a melodious sound, with bright purification and full of hope of magic. Feeling his negative emotions disappear, Peter gently stroked Field's gorgeous feathers. Thank you, Field, I feel better. Alan White, who felt the power of the phoenix at close range, was also stunned by this magical power. The chirping sound of the phoenix is very pleasant. Unlike the euphoria potion, which makes the body feel excited and happy, the voice of the phoenix carries a kind of purifying magic power, which drives away negative emotions without affecting the quickness of thinking. The ability to bring good luck. Alan White was very excited. He wanted to get close to Field but didn't dare to get close, but when he saw Phoenix arrogantly turning his head and aiming his butt at him, he could only climb onto the bed in a dejected manner. Peter York looked at this scene amusingly. In fact, before Harry Potter came to Hogwarts, it seemed very peaceful here. Slytherin and Gryffindor didn't have any major conflicts, they just didn't like each other and quarreled occasionally. As the first person in Slytherin to accept him, although it is because of his identity as a phoenix, Peter still has a good impression of Alan White and doesn't mind becoming friends in the future. As for the potions class tomorrow morning, he has already memorized all the knowledge of the first grade. With the lucky blessing of Phoenix, he should be able to cope with the potions class. Good night, White. Good night, Peter. Good night, Field. The firewood in the fireplace gradually burns out, and the dormitory is quiet, except for the snoring. Waking up in the morning, under the shadow of being lost last night, Peter quickly finished washing up, then brought the potions textbook to the common room, and carefully reviewed the first-year potions knowledge again. After most of the people had arrived, in order to avoid getting lost on the way to the restaurant, he decided to go to the restaurant with the other senior troops for dinner. After successfully arriving at the restaurant, looking at the table full of chicken thighs, sausages, mashed potatoes, and mince, Peter York tried to tap the golden plate in front of him with his wand, and whispered, "Steak, fried eggs, or still have a glass of milk." As soon as he finished speaking, a well-cooked steak and omelette appeared on Peter York's plate, as well as a glass of hot milk. Wow! The Slytherin students around them looked at Peter's results in amazement. They never thought there would be such an operation, and they all learned to report the menu. Peter silently mourned the house elves in the kitchen, and felt guilty for adding to their burden. But thinking of those weird-thinking house elves, maybe he was still grateful to him, so he ate breakfast with peace of mind. Just as Peter York was comfortably finishing his steak, Alan White rushed over from the door and sat beside him, picked up a chicken leg and ate it, asking, "Why didn't you wait for me, or are you a roommate? Just eat for yourself." Peter York rolled his eyes. "You woke up earlier than I did and ended up lingering in the bathroom. I don't want to be late, after all, it's my first potions class." Alan White smirked. After all, he doesn't have the same good-looking appearance as Peter's, and he must take good care of it before he can come out. You must know that Slytherin students don't care much about Peter's Muggle ancestry. In addition to his strength and talent, the appearance of an angel when he smiles is part of it. Therefore, no matter in the Muggle world or the magical world, there is a theorem, that is, beauty is justice. After breakfast, Peter York was about to rush to the potions classroom with Alan White when he saw the Weasley twins rush into the dining room in a panic, pick up a few slices of bread and sausages and walk towards him. "Well, good morning, Peter." The twins greeted excitedly, swallowing their food. "Good morning, Fred, George," Peter York asked with a smile, watching the two of them almost gobble up. "Your first class was also potions." The twins nodded, saying that the school didn't know what was going on. Most of Slytherin's courses were taken with Gryffindor, the nemesis. Could it be that these two colleges, which have been opposed since the establishment of the school, can turn their battles into jade? Alan White next to him looked at the two Gryffindors and frowned, but said nothing. "This is my roommate, Alan White." Peter York introduced the twins first. Introducing the Weasley brothers to Alan White again. The two of them are Fred and George, who met on the Hogwarts Express. "Hello." The twins greeted first. "Hello." Alan White nodded, looking very reserved. While chatting, several people rushed to the basement where the potions classroom was located. The twins, who were both fearless and fearless, also began to quiet down as they approached the classroom. Apparently, Professor Snape's terrifying reputation was also well known in Gryffindor. Walking into the classroom, there are many glass bottles around the classroom. The bottles are filled with blue-green liquid. Some unknown animal organs can be vaguely seen soaked in the liquid, and some glass bottles are filled with blue-green liquid. Eyeballs that move. In addition, the potions classroom is built in the basement. The whole room is humid and dark, and it looks eerie. If you don't know that this is Hogwarts, you will feel that you have encountered the Dark Wizard's secret laboratory. For a while, the still lively voice gradually decreased, and they all found a place to sit down and waited quietly for the class. Peter York was sitting in the front row, knowing that Professor Snape was going to get into trouble for him later. And Alan White and the twins shamelessly abandoned him, and ran to the back to look at him sympathetically. Bang! After the students of the two colleges in the classroom were full, the gloomy door was suddenly pushed open, and the door panel creaked and groaned. Asterisk. A slender figure walked in from behind the door, wrapped in a black robe, and on his sallow skin, a pair of indifferent eyes swept the students around him. Under the big eagle-like nose, the thin lips are pressed tightly, and with the long greasy hair, it is no different from the evil wizard in the Muggle story. Snape waved his wand as he walked to the podium, and the curtains around him closed, blocking out the sparse sunlight, making the classroom even darker, with only the dim light of the alcohol lamp causing the figures to shake. Snape picked up the roll call on the podium, slowly looked at the little wizards below who were stunned by his aura, and said in a low voice, "I will follow the roll call next, and the person who reads it will shout to make sure. No one dares to play disappear in my class. Angelina Johnson. Arrive. Fred Weasley. Arrive. ... Peter York. Arrive." Peter York hurriedly shouted that he didn't want to be caught in the wrong place again. Snape paused when he read Peter's name, then continued. After reading the list, Snape looked at everyone and said in a low voice, "You're here to learn the subtleties of pharmacy. Since there's no silly wand waving here, many of you don't quite believe it's magic. I don't expect you to actually know this pharmacy. The beauty of it." At this moment, a fascinated expression appeared on Snape's originally indifferent face, and his calm tone fluctuated a little. "Think about it. When you simmer herbs in a cauldron, the potion slowly boils, and white smoke rises, in that liquid with incomparably subtle power. I can teach you how to confuse the senses, brewing honor, even preventing death, as long as you're not stupid." After saying this long paragraph, Snape looked at Peter York, who was sitting upright, suddenly showing a hint of ill will. "By the way, I want to select some students before the official lecture. Have you previewed in advance to see if you are hopelessly stupid?" Hearing Snape's words, all the students began to riot, especially the students who had not reviewed it anxiously and prayed not to be drawn, and the students who reviewed it also kept memorizing knowledge points in their minds. "Quiet." With a dark face, Snape called out to the person he was with, and then stared at Peter. "Peter York, I want to ask what ingredients are needed for a scabies potion." Peter breathed a sigh of relief. This was the content of the first-grade textbook, and he answered seriously. "A scabies remedy requires tentacled slugs, porcupine spines, and snake teeth, Professor." "Then what can I do with frog or caterpillar mucus, lavender, and valerian?" "That's a sleeping potion, Professor." "If I need bezoar, where can I find it?" "Bezoar has a detoxifying effect in the stomach of a cow." After asking Peter 3 questions, Snape didn't ask any more questions, but turned around and walked to the podium, lowered his head and wrote a few words. His expression returned to his original indifference. 5 points for Slytherin. A preview for Mr. York. Ding! Get the extra points from the professor and get 1 point. The current points are 32 points. The system prompt sounded in his mind. Snape didn't ask any more questions, which relieved the other students, but the rest of the class cast a shadow over everyone's heart. During the process of making the potion, Snape wandered around all the students like a ghost, staring at every step of the students carefully with his empty eyes. The potion made in this lesson is what Peter answers to Snape's first question, a scabies potion. The production process Peter remembered clearly, so he handled the material in an orderly manner. First, put 6 parts of snake teeth into a mortar and grind them into powder. The powder is then poured into the crucible. Wave the wand and stir to heat for 10 seconds. Then chop 4 slugs and 2 porcupine quills into the crucible. Stir 5 more turns clockwise. Wave your wand and you're done. Looking at the green liquid in the crucible, Peter nodded with satisfaction and poured the liquid into the prepared glass bottle. As soon as he looked up, Snape's hollow eyes startled him, the potion in his hand almost shook, and he didn't know when he was standing behind him. Are your hands made of mollusks? Peter York, you can't even hold a potion bottle. Snape said sarcastically. Then he picked up the finished scabies medicine and showed it to everyone. Mr. York, the first one is finished, and the finish is better, 5 points for Slytherin. Ding, get the professor's praise, reward 1 point. The current point is 33 points. The system prompts. Snape put the potion that Peter had made and put it in a special place for storage, and continued to walk around staring at everyone. In addition to Peter, even Slytherin's students were almost scolded again. In addition to being scolded, Gryffindor students were also severely deducted points. After class, the Gryffindors walked out of the classroom in dejection. Except for the Weasley twins who quickly returned to their quirky appearances, the 2 of them had a good talent for potions, and they were one of the few Gryffindors who didn't get deducted. After this potions class, Snape's reputation for terror spread once again, and his class became a nightmare for the students. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, who hadn't taken the potions class, took the potions textbook and memorized them over and over again. There was only one potions class in the morning, so after the class, Peter was about to go back to the dormitory with Alan White to rest when he was dragged to the Quidditch pitch by the Weasley twins. George Fred, why are you bringing me to the stadium? Peter York asked helplessly, looking at the twins who were driving by himself. The twins pretend to be mysterious. It's a surprise. It's not fun to say it in advance. Since we haven't finished exploring Hogwarts last night, let's start on the pitch today. When Peter heard the twins mention the exploration game again, he said with a headache, please, we have 7 years in the future, why should we finish exploring now? Hearing the words, the twins looked at each other and smiled, then placed themselves on either side of Peter, and said proudly, we'll talk about it later, today we're taking you to see the most fun sports in the magic world. I remember our flying lessons were on Friday, not today. Peter York speculates, noting that there's nothing to see on the Quidditch pitch other than a grassy field, and that's all about flying lessons. Could it be that you stole the broom from the school and wanted to fly ahead of time? Peter looked at the twins in surprise. With what he knew about them, they could definitely do such a thing. How is that possible? The twins stared at Peter with the expression you've wronged a good person. We've only just come to Hogwarts, and we would never do such a dangerous thing. Otherwise, Mom will send us a roaring letter. But, the twins rolled their eyes, thank you for the reminder, Peter. I want to fly with you when we get the broom next time. Peter rolled his eyes and didn't expect his guess. Instead, he suggested new ideas for the 2 live treasures, and quickly changed the subject. Then what are you going to do with me on the court? The twins no longer pretended to be mysterious, and dragged him into the Quidditch pitch, explaining, today is the day when the colleges select Quidditch players. Many students come to test, but there are many things to watch. Test. Peter York thinks of the only national sport in the wizarding world, Quidditch, the magic version of football full of bugs that rides on a broom and plays in the sky. Quidditch looks like a very passionate pember, but what the hell are seekers and snitches? The outcome of a team sport is determined by the seeker, who wins 150 points for catching the snitch, and the game is over. If the snitch is not caught, the game continues, no matter how long. Like in Harry Potter's story, when he was the fastest, he caught the golden snitch in the first 5 minutes to end the game. Then what are the others doing? It is also said that the longest game was that the 2 teams did not see the golden snitch for more than 3 months, and finally ended the game reluctantly. The rules of this game are completely irrelevant. So Peter has little interest in Quidditch, other than being curious about flying with a broom. He prefers to watch football games. He used to go to watch games when he has time, which is different from football clubs such as Arsenal, Chelsea and West Ham United supported by the nobles. Peter doesn't have a specific favorite team. Just like the masses in his previous life, he supported whichever team played well. This made Wales, the steward of Arsenal fans, and Christine, the aunt of Manchester United fans, very hard to see, and said that he was not a real fan. The Quidditch pitch is huge, surrounded by stands, and there are 3 50-foot-high gold poles on each end of the pitch, with rings on top of the poles. At this time, many people were flying around the sky on broomsticks, and more people were busy signing up for the test on the ground. There were students of different grades, and even 1 or 2 first-year students who wanted to mix into the registration team were arrested, pulled out. The Quidditch teams of the 4 academies chose new teammates for the test today, and the test method was also very straightforward. Students fight together. The team consists of a goalkeeper, 3 chasers, 2 batsmen and a seeker. The players rotate their positions during the game and are hired if they perform well. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff, and Gryffindor and Slytherin, are the team's voluntary opponents in the Academy Testers 2-on-1 match. Peter York looked at the red and green students chasing the game on the field. He was very puzzled, and he didn't know what kind of complicated relationship Slytherin and Gryffindor had. According to the usual 2 people hate each other. When choosing a competition object, they should choose other academies, but the people from the 2 academies chose each other by coincidence. But during the game, they fought very fiercely, and they all wanted to smash the opponent down, forgetting that this was just a trial match. Peter was taken to the Gryffindor registration venue by the twins, and a stocky red-haired man saw them, walked over, sat down beside the twins, looked at the pitch from time to time, and asked with a smile, "These 2, how is the day at school, are you still used to it?" The twins waved their hands and said with a smile, "It's not bad, at least there's no mother's roar." Charlie smiled helplessly when he heard it, and turned his eyes to Peter, who was wearing the Slytherin Academy logo and was very conspicuous among the red Gryffindors. His eyes were surprised. "Looks like you've made new friends." The twins pulled Peter closer and introduced, "Charlie, this is Peter York, we met on the train." He turned his head and introduced to Peter again, "Peter, this is Charlie, the second child of our family. He is the seeker and captain of the Gryffindor Quidditch team, and he is in charge of selecting new players this time." "Hello, may I call you Charlie?" Peter held out his hand first. "Of course, don't mind if I call you Peter too." Charlie Weasley smiled, stretched out his hand to hold Peter and said cheerfully. Seeing Charlie glance at Peter's Slytherin school uniform, the twins said triumphantly to Charlie, "Peter is the first Slytherin friend we've ever made, so cool." "By the way, Charlie, how was the test today?" Following Charlie's gaze, the twins looked at Slytherin and Gryffindor who were competing fiercely, and asked curiously. Charlie shook his head and wiped the sweat from his face. "There are not many good ones. Some even ride their brooms unsteadily. We have to watch from the side, for fear of falling off the brooms and breaking my neck, and I almost died of exhaustion." "Then there must be a shortage of people in your team. Can the 2 of us join the Quidditch team? George and I can be batsmen. You know our level." "Don't even think about it, you are only first graders." Charlie looked serious. "If you can pass the assessment in the 2nd grade, I will allow you to join the team." "There are always exceptions, aren't they?" The twins winked at Charlie's cuteness and continued, "You are our older brother, and this problem is easy to solve, isn't it?" Peter looked at the twins playing cute, and laughed very happily. Charlie was so embarrassed that he put his hand on a younger brother who was rubbing hard against him, and said angrily, "It's because you are my younger brother, so you have to be more strict. Before school started, my mother told me and Percy to take care of the 2 of you. Save the trouble." "Oh, nasty mom, take care of us when we get to school." The twins pouted in disgust. "That's the 2 of you restless," Charlie said sternly, glaring at his 2 younger brothers again. "Yesterday Mom wrote to me, saying that before you left home for school, Ronald's bed was stuffed with goblins. Turned into a spider. Ronald is too scared to go back to bed these days." When the twins heard this, they sang happily, "Oh, our poor baby Ronald, the poor ghost of spiders." Charlie was even more angry when he heard the twins' words, pointed to the 2 brothers and said, "It's not the 2 of you who did it. When Ronald was young, you turned his teddy bear into a big spider to scare him, and he wouldn't be so afraid of spiders. Peter York looked at the innocent eyes of the twin brothers, very speechless, and also very sympathetic to Ronald. It is also very unfortunate to have such two brothers who like to make fun of him. Charlie watched his two younger brothers staring at him with wet eyes, still persistently wanting to join the Quidditch team through the back door. Although they knew they were pretending, they still couldn't stand it and said a little compromise. Okay, you can join the team as a substitute, but don't expect to play this year, just allow you to participate in our usual training. In fact, the batsmen in the team will graduate next year, so it is possible to train the twins as reserve batsmen in advance. This is the power that Charlie has as the captain, and he also knows that the twins are good, not really. Power for personal gain. Hooray! The twins hugged Charlie and patted his shoulder excitedly. Charlie was a little overwhelmed by the enthusiasm of his two younger brothers. He coughed a few times, then got up and said, "I'm going to stare at the boys on the court. Training starts tomorrow. Remember to come on time." Then he smiled and said to Peter, "Peter, I'm leaving first, it's a pleasure to meet you today." "Me too." Peter York smiled and nodded to Charlie. After Charlie left, Peter also said hello to the twins and left the Gryffindor field. After all, he was a student of Slytherin, and it was not the same thing to stay there all the time. He walked slowly around the pitch and decided to check out the Slytherin grounds, hearing from the twins that the Quidditch Cup had been occupied by Gryffindor over the years because of Charlie's presence. As a member of Slytherin, although most people did not show welcome to him, at least he grew up with aristocratic education and knew that if he wanted to be truly accepted by this Slytherin group, he needed to show a certain sincerity. Like befriending the Gryffindor twins, the Slytherin folks wouldn't mind too much. But it is unacceptable that he has been communicating with people from other academies, but has not shown that he wants to work hard to integrate into Slytherin. Peter York used to be very strange about those traversers who were assigned to other colleges. Without exception, they chose to make friends with the Gryffindor trio, and then follow them to fight monsters and demons, completely forgetting the value of the college to which they belonged. Otherwise, they would have chosen Gryffindor from the beginning. Why bother with so many twists and turns? After all, the Sorting Hat still respects the wishes of students. And Peter York, in his own words, is lazy and afraid of trouble. In the 2 years before Harry Potter came to school, he worked hard to accumulate strength. As for the third-year Philosopher's Stone incident, he basically chose to watch it on the sidelines of the Savior training game developed by Dumbledore. The 4th grade secret room incident, if possible, he can provide some information to the professors in the school. He does not believe that a basilisk can be destroyed by a 12-year-old child, and the professors will not be able to deal with it. And he also has Field, a phoenix, a blind basilisk, which is not too threatening. As for Tom Riddle's diary, this Voldemort Horcrux, if there is a chance, after Harry Potter gets it, he can also give it to the school professors. With their knowledge they will definitely recognize it as a black magic item. In short, his purpose is to leave everything to adults. Looking at what happened in the early days of Harry Potter, I could have explained things clearly to the professors in one sentence. These bear children will always break out into personal heroism, and then heedlessly face enemies that are countless times stronger than themselves. Luckily defeated the enemy under the aura of the protagonist. But Peter York is not sure that he also has the aura of the protagonist, so when he does not have enough strength in the early stage, he will choose to stay temporarily. As for the final decisive battle, if he can't escape, he will also choose to shoot. After all, since the appearance of his variable as a transmigrator, Voldemort can no longer be expected to be bounced back by his own death curse like in the original book, and then he will be lucky to win. Thinking of this, Peter couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency in his heart. The magic power he has now is almost comparable to that of an adult wizard, but he has not been trained. It's a lot of mana output rather than skill, which would be a big disadvantage in a wizard duel. Peter, Peter. A few shouts woke Peter from his musings. Here, look up. Peter. Cedric Diggory was riding a broom and beckoning from above. Following the sound, Peter saw Cedric in the sky, blushing and sweating excitedly, waving his hands in the sky, as if he was still holding something in his hand, and turned around and flew towards him after seeing him. In the blink of an eye, Cedric flew to Peter's side, flush with the stand, and excitedly said to him, "Peter, I joined the Quidditch reserve, and I will be the seeker for the Hufflepuff team from now on." Quote. Seeing the snitch in Cedric's hands, Peter York was very happy for him and said, "Congratulations, congratulations, Cedric, it seems Hufflepuff has found a great seeker." The students at Hufflepuff Academy below also cheered, as if cheering for Cedric. Peter looked at Cedric, who was in high spirits at the moment, and already had a bit of the demeanor of Prince Hufflepuff who could represent Hogwarts in the Goblet of Fire in the future. "Thank you, Peter." Looking at Peter York's sincere eyes, Cedric instantly returned to his shy look. After agreeing to watch the Quidditch match together, the two separated, and Peter York continued to walk towards the Slytherin area. Slytherin's venue is mainly filled with seniors, and the first-year students are only Peter who has just arrived. After everyone glanced at him, they continued to stare at the testers who were fighting with Gryffindor in the sky. Although they did not roar as much as the opposite Gryffindor, they all clenched their fists and cursed the sky above. Gryffindor gets knocked off a broomstick by a fiery bludger. Judging from the fact that this is just a trial for the team to select new members, Slytherin and Gryffindor are already so fierce, it is difficult for Peter to imagine the official game, how fierce the fight will be. The competition became more and more intense, and all the participants showed their abilities and tried their best to express themselves. But after a Slytherin batter accidentally hit a Gryffindor player with his bat, the scene fell into chaos, and the furious Gryffindor rushed into Slytherin's team, kicking, and the two sides suddenly fell into a melee. Peter looked at it in a stunned manner, and Charlie, who had been smiling honestly across from him, suddenly fell into a rage, and rode his broom into the sky. Terence Warrington, the captain of Slytherin on their side, followed closely into the chaotic air. Then the two sides immediately fell into a group fight. You kicked me, I kicked you, and the Insidious even used a bat as a weapon, or grabbed the tail of the opponent's broom in an attempt to make him fall. Looking at the scene in front of him, Peter York felt a little speechless. How could a good selection of newcomers turn into a group of martial arts? Slytherin and Gryffindor students who can ride brooms on the ground almost all flew into the sky to participate in the battle. Peter even saw the twins, riding brooms and holding bats to the back of the head. Peter looked at the dangerous actions of the two sides in the air, and was very worried that someone would fall, but both sides were red-eyed and had no scruples about each other. As Peter feared, a Slytherin student, who was hit by a violent bludger in the shoulder and fell off, was teetering in the air clutching a broom handle with one hand, and the other melee players didn't notice his condition. Peter was startled. He tried to use the levitating spell to save people, but the distance was too far to reach. Seeing this critical situation, without thinking, he picked up a broom on the ground and rushed into the sky. When he turned into a phoenix form, he felt the joy of flying, and felt that the whole sky was his private place, and he could fly as he wanted. Now riding a broomstick is another experience. It's just that Peter has no other thoughts now. The phoenix's flying instinct allows him to easily control the broom, approach the person who is about to fall at the fastest speed, and grab his bat collar in the last lesson. Sounds loud. Peter grabbed the Slytherin student who had just fallen with one hand, and held his wand to his throat with the other, chanting the spell. Hurry up, the professor is here. Under the influence of the spell, Peter's voice vibrated in the ears of many people like a super loud sound, causing everyone to stop instantly. Peter wasn't lying, because Hufflepuff students had just called to the professor, and now a somber-faced Snape and a disappointed-faced Professor McGonagall were standing on the sidelines. When all the people involved in the fight came to the professor obediently, Professor McGonagall was trembling with anger. I have never encountered such a thing. It was actually two college students fighting. This kind of rudeness completely makes the college ashamed. Quidditch is a sacred and fair game, and it turns out to be the reason for your fights. I think schools may no longer be suitable for Quidditch events. Snape, who had never been fond of Quidditch, nodded in agreement. No, please, Professor McGonagall. Charlie Weasley and Slytherin Captain Terence Warrington pleaded upon hearing that Quidditch would be cancelled, and others who loved Quidditch begged not to. Mr. Weasley and Mr. Warrington, I am very disappointed with you two. Professor McGonagall looked at the two with a blank expression. As the captain of Gryffindor and Slytherin, not only did you not restrain your team members, but you also participated in the fight, which is very serious. In view of this, all students involved in the fight will be locked up, and you will have 500 college points deducted for this. Whoa, there was an uproar on the field. Hogwarts had never deducted so many points at one time in the past 100 years. The scores of the two colleges were deducted into negative numbers, and there were still a large number of negative points. All the students panicked and were beaten down. Even the quirky twins looked like eggplants. They were about to lie down in minutes. And confinement. As for Mr. York, Professor McGonagall looked at Peter York, who looked uneasy, smiled a little, and said, "You were able to rescue your classmates in time when they were in danger, and also stop the fight, which makes me proud. This rewards you with 50 points. Thank you, Professor McGonagall." Peter breathed a sigh of relief. Snape, who was beside him, softened his face slightly to Peter, and turned to look at the Slytherin students gloomily. "I think you obviously forgot Slytherin's code of conduct, 100 times, due next Monday, do you remember it?" The Slytherin students nodded. "Remember. Professor Snape." Slytherin and Gryffindor students fought on the Quidditch pitch and were deducted 500 points. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff, in particular, are even more excited, because this school year's Academy Cup has eliminated two of the top contenders ahead of schedule. Peter York followed Slytherin's team back to the dormitory. The black gemstones representing negative numbers in the scorer in the common room were very striking. In previous years, the final score of the Academy's Academy Cup was not as much as deducted this time. Prefect Chris Jones was sitting on the sofa by the fireplace, looking sternly at the Slytherins who were bowing their heads and admitting their mistakes. "Look at you, self-proclaimed noble, shrewd, just a bunch of reckless and impulsive griffins. Many. I won't say anything more. Since it's because of Quidditch, then I hope that the Quidditch Cup this term will not appear in the cabinets of other houses. If you can't get the House Cup, win the Quidditch for me. Odd Cup, can it be done, eh?" "It can be done," Captain Terence Warrington shouted in unison with the team. Chris Jones turned his head to look at Peter York, who had been silent since he came in, showing a satisfied expression. As the only Muggle wizard in Slytherin, Peter showed strength beyond his peers from the moment he entered the academy, which made the seniors pay attention. Watching him calmly integrate into the group, neither flattering nor cautious, so that others can't find a reason to hate him, even if he is of Muggle blood. This shows that Peter York not only has magical talent and strength, but also is very smart. Such a person must be extraordinary in the future. "Mr. York," Prefect Chris Jones named Peter, and everyone else looked at him. "You did a good job this time. Not only did you save Daniel Miller from breaking his neck, you managed to stop the accident before it got more serious. I'm glad that Slytherin has a student like you." Peter York smiled and waved his hand. He knew that after this incident, he was successfully integrated into the Slytherin group, and there was no longer a vague sense of distance. The student named Daniel Miller who was rescued by him also stepped forward with a grateful face and reached out to hold his hand and said, "Thank you, Peter York, if it weren't for you, I would have been smashed badly." "You're welcome," Peter replied with a smile. "Ding, get the approval of the professor and classmates, and reward 2 points. The current points are 35 points. The system prompts. ... When Peter communicated with Daniel Miller, Prefect Chris Jones left the sofa and said blankly to the dozen or so students involved in the fight, "Professor Snape, considering that there are too many people in this confinement, decided to change to 1 semester of labor service, go to Filch to pick up assignments at night. Moreover, in view of the conflict between the two colleges, the Quidditch selection method of each college will be changed in the future. Instead of selecting through the confrontation between the two colleges, you can only choose your own team members." Everyone sighed suddenly. Filch, the old squib, usually turned a blind eye to Slytherin students. After all, most of these students have complex backgrounds, but as long as he catches students who make mistakes, he will gloat at the misfortune and arrange dirty work to toss these students hard. Peter's face was bitter when he heard the words of confinement, because he also had confinement tonight, and it was still confinement at the potions office. He thought that in view of his performance today, Snape should also cancel his confinement punishment, and he didn't know what trouble he would be asked to do. The first class of the afternoon was charms taught by Flitwick, with students from Ravenclaw. Peter and Alan White sat together, looking at Professor Flitwick standing on the table with a few thick books under his feet in order to look at the students, and couldn't help but laugh. Everyone suspected that he had the blood of a goblin, but they would not ask politely. Professor Flitwick is very passionate in his lectures. His sharp voice can always spit out a few golden sentences, and he is also very good at interacting with students. However, in teaching the students to cast spells, he always seemed to be too careful. He spent most of the day teaching theoretical knowledge, and only allowed the students to cast the fluorescent spells when the get out of class was about to end. Even the student of Ravenclaw, known as the studious, showed a bored expression. The second class is the history of magic class that claims to have hypnotic abilities. The tone of Cuthbert Binns's lecture is quite in line with his ghost identity. Peter York gave up after holding on for half an hour, and Cuthbert Binns' tone was so flat that even if he was concentrating on the lecture, he would unconsciously wander off and start dozing off. When the bell rang and Cuthbert Binns floated away, Peter breathed a sigh of relief, not listening to the lullaby anymore. "Alan, wake up, get out of class is over." Peter pushed Alan White, who was lying on the table and slept, and looked at him with disgust at the way he was drooling. Alan White raised his head sleepily and looked around, wiping his saliva, apparently not fully awake from his dream. Peter's confinement time starts at 6 o'clock, so after he asked Alan to go back to the dormitory with his textbooks, he went to the cellar alone and knocked on the door of the office. "Professor Snape, this is Peter York, may I come in?" Boom! The potions professor's office door suddenly opened from inside, revealing Snape's impatient face. "Come in, kid." Pulling Peter in through the door, Snape pointed to the wooden bucket full of slugs on the ground and said, "Take it off, this is your job tonight, when will you be done?" "Time to go." Peter looked at the slugs in the barrel. The sticky green ones were disgusting, and he was glad he didn't eat his lunch at the moment, otherwise he would definitely vomit. There are many slugs, and his task is to clean up the mucus and impurities on the surface of these slugs, and then put them in another tub as the raw material for the potion. Peter endured disgust and picked up the dragon leather gloves on the chair beside him, put them on his hands, and squatted down to start cleaning the slugs. Snape, who was frowning and lowering his head to correct his homework, gave the student a T on the parchment homework, which means, terrible, and looked up at Peter, who was seriously dealing with the slug, with a satisfied look on his face. In the past, those students who came to confinement were always frightened by his gloomy expression. They didn't find the dragon leather gloves prepared next to them, and grabbed them with their bare hands. The result was a stinging sting with caustic mucus, "Wow wow," and then Snape's head-to-head taunt. Both of them bowed their heads and did their own thing, quietly. Time passed little by little. After dealing with the slugs, Peter was so tired that his back was sore and he looked up to see that the clock pointed to 8 o'clock. He found that his efficiency was quite good. He got up and moved his stiff body and said to Snape, "Professor, I'm done." Snape glanced up at the finished slug, and then said with a blank face, "You can go when you're done." And many more. When Peter opened the door to the office, Snape's voice sounded behind him, staring at him with indifferent eyes. "In view of your performance tonight, there is no need to come to confinement later." Hearing this, Peter showed a delighted smile, bowed and thanked, "Thank you, Professor Snape." Snape didn't respond to Peter's thanks, just snorted, bowed his head and went about his business. After leaving Snape's office, Peter was walking on the way to the dormitory. It was already 8 o'clock in the evening, and dinner was not over in the auditorium restaurant yet. But after dealing with the slugs all night, he had a disgusting smell on his body, so he had to go back to the dormitory to wash up. After tossing around in the bathroom for a long time, Peter finally came out slowly, picked up a bottle of lavender-scented perfume, sprayed it again, put on a new school uniform, and walked out of the dormitory. There were already some people gathered in the common room. After Peter came out, the eyes of those who saw him lit up, with expressions of amazement and admiration. Peter, who had just finished bathing, had his blonde hair combed back evenly, revealing a smooth forehead, and his body after being transformed by the blood of the phoenix tended to be perfect. The skin is delicate and snow-white, there is no mole or freckles on the handsome face, and the pale golden eyelashes are like scallops, covering the blue eyes. The bridge of the nose is straight with a hint of an eagle hook, the warm and full red lips are pressed into a crescent moon, and a faint smile is revealed, making the whole room seem to see Cupid, the god of love, in an instant. "Wow!" Alan White squeezed through the crowd and said with a startled expression, "Peter, you are so beautiful now." Peter rolled his eyes at him. He always revealed a peculiar and elegant temperament, so that others would not pay too much attention to his appearance. Therefore, although people who met Peter knew that he was handsome, they would not be surprised. Tonight, Peter, exhausted, took a comfortable bath in the bathroom and removed his armored shell in vain, causing a sensation in the common room. Alan White pulled Peter up the stairs and walked straight to the fireplace, with girls constantly greeting Peter along the way. "Hello, Peter. I'm Alice Sharp. Peter, you look great." "Hello. ... Passing through the crowd, Peter York sat down a little confused and exclaimed, "I never thought I would be greeted by so many people, it's unbelievable." HMPH, who made you have a popular face? If you weren't too young now, there would definitely be a lot of beautiful senior sisters who want to be your girlfriend. Ellen White said jealously. Peter ignored this precocious roommate. Shouldn't all 11-year-olds focus on playing? Knowing so many things, let him live in his 20s in his previous life, and now he is in his 30s. How can a middle-aged uncle who has never been in love live? Peter didn't sit much. His stomach was still empty and the school dinner was over again, so he was looking for something to eat. Out of the Slytherin lounge, Peter moved down the hallway towards Hufflepuff's dormitory, remembering the route to the kitchen thanks to previous explorations with the twins and Cedric. The Hogwarts kitchen is located near the Hufflepuff dormitory, on the second floor, so there is no need to take the stairs that change at any time. After a while he went down the marble staircase, turned left, and came to the end of a wide stone corridor, where he found a picture of a silver bowl full of fruit. Scratching the pear in the painting, the pear giggled and turned into a big green handle. Peter grabbed the door handle and pulled it, then walked into the door that appeared. "Hey Peter, why are you here?" A figure was sitting on the long table in the kitchen, looking at Peter, who suddenly appeared in surprise. Peter was a little surprised to see Cedric in the kitchen with a stack of snack cakes on the table. He sighed, "Didn't you have dinner either?" When Cedric Diggory heard the words, he instantly became hesitant, and his eyes were evasive, but he didn't look at Peter. No, our academy is hosting a gala dinner in the common room, so I'm here to get some food." "Oh, is there anything pleasant? Tell me about it." Peter York looked at Cedric's veiled expression, and instantly became curious, but he wanted to tease him even more, and said deliberately, "Aren't we friends? Share with me if you have good news. I'm only one night all locked up with Professor Snape, missed dinner, bad luck." The pure Prince Hufflepuff couldn't help teasing, blushing, and said a little embarrassedly, "Didn't Slytherin and Gryffindor fight with more than 500 points deducted today, so only Ravenclaw can compete with us for the Academy Cup, and our academy is currently ranked first, so the seniors want to celebrate." Peter's face was embarrassed. He didn't expect that these little badgers would have a dark side, and they would openly celebrate the deduction of points from other colleges and the friendship between the colleges. After a moment of silence between the two, the appearance of a house elf broke the awkward atmosphere. The elf controlled a ball of muffins floating in the air and put them in the box prepared in front of Cedric. The smell of the muffins reminded Peter of his purpose here. The house elves at Hogwarts were not as miserable as Dobby at the Malfoys. They all wore a clean square with the Hogwarts logo embroidered around it. In addition to the bat-like ears, slender nose and dead wood-like limbs that are unsightly, they have been serving Hogwarts for generations. The wizards have 3 meals a day, laundry and cleaning, etc. These hard-working the elves are in charge. According to the records of the history of magic, these house elves were the races of slaves who were conquered by wizards in ancient times. They became an ancient and wealthy wizarding family by inculcating the enslavement thoughts of serving wizards and obeying wizards' orders from generation to generation. A slave, who undertakes all household chores, is bound by the master, and is tortured by the master's whipping at any time, and his status is low. In a school history of Hogwarts, it is recorded that when these house elves were persecuted by wizards, they were accepted by the kind Helga Hufflepuff, the first headmaster of Hogwarts, blessed by him, and opened up out of the kitchen as the exclusive place for the elves, giving the elves a home. So the house elves in the kitchen have lived here for generations, exchanging their labor for the blessing of Hogwarts, and being loyal to Hogwarts, the school of magic, and allowing the castle to remain the same after 1,000 years. Standing by the Black Lake. "Mr. Diggory, the supper you asked us to do has been completed. What else do you need us to do?" The house elf asked in a shrill voice with anticipation. He hoped that the little wizard would need more services. No need, these are enough," Cedric replied, somewhat bewildered. he was still ashamed of his college's celebration of other people's deductions, especially in front of Peter, who was regarded as a friend, worried that Peter would so stay away from him. When the house elf heard the words, he became instantly lost, and his skinny body smaller than the goblin turned to Peter and looked at him expectantly. "Mr. Wizard, do you need Chi-Chi to do something for you?" Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.